Good morning, it's Ginny and Tim from DS Tech, and we're going to talk about the latest in AI developments.
Yep.
It's interesting stuff. Stay tuned and, drop your questions and your comments. I'd love to hear from you so that we can get more ideas for these videos and help you out more.
Yeah.
So, what do we got?
So, that every week or every 2 weeks, it seems there's a new advancement in
Yeah,
AI, and so it's hard to kind of keep up. So hopefully this will help you. With the one newest one that's kind of happening now is they're getting to more and more. They call it local models are becoming more accessible to people. So the
because of the
idea of
DeepSeek, right?
well, because of the DeepSeek, and then I think that other projects were just kind of piggybacking
Brewing.
on that and brewing as well.
Yeah.
So traditionally, if you wanted to use AI, use like Microsoft's Copilot, ChatGPT. I think there's the Grok one on Twitter. There's so or X. There's so many different AIs out there, but a lot
Yep.
of those require giant warehouses of computer hardware to be running and doing the calculations. And so when you ask it a question, you're actually sending your query off to a giant warehouse of computers that can solve it real fast and give you your answer right away. Well, they're getting so more efficient that you can actually run that what they call locally on your system. So the kind of the benefits of that is that, well, no one else has access to your data. It's more private for yourself. But then there's also some risks with that later I'll talk about as well. So the biggest one, I guess, that's making the headlines is that there's this one called, it's released by Zira. It's called ZOS, and it's an open weight
ZOS.
ZOS. Yep.
Okay.
It's an open weight text to speech AI model, and it can run on consumer hardware, which is still a higher heavy line, like they call it a 30 series or a 40 series graphics card. But even like a 30 series card, like a 3060, you could probably get for like $400 or $500. So the
Mm.
barrier to entry is getting a lot less than it used to be, where you don't need a warehouse of graphics cards to run this stuff. You can actually run it on your computer in a reasonable time. So unlike DeepSeek, which requires kind of like the higher end, at least a 4090 or something like that, it is accessible to a little bit more users because the overall, it's just kind of doing audio. This is just an audio AI where you can basically, have different voices and things like that. So it's not as intensive as asking it a mathematical question or a programming question or something where it needs to do all this data. It's focused on one task, so it's able to do that task at a little bit more optimized, efficient way. Um,
So it's audio, like,
Audio, yep. So if I wanted to be Ginny, I can literally just take my voice, say whatever I want, run it through this thing, and it will change my voice to sound like the whoever I want it to be. Yes.
that's creepy.
Yeah. So it can generate real-time audio synthesis even on mid-level consumer hardware. So real-time audio synthesis, that's even better actually. That's where you're talking and it's changing it on the fly. So I could be in a Zoom call or just talking on the phone and you just sound like someone else on the other end automatically. Um, so yeah, goodbye Yak Backs. This is a little bit more impressive. So
Oh my
so currently for
gosh.
this one, it only supports Linux only, but possibility with having Windows, Mac support, things like that too. So if you are wanting to play with a lot of this AI stuff, typically you're pretty technical anyway. You usually just for this particular one, it's only available on Linux currently. It uses a Gradio interface for an easy-to-use web-based UI. It supports text-to-speech synthesis with customizable voice settings, and it does fast processing. So it can generate about 30 seconds of audio in under 20 seconds. And that's on a 4090 though, so the highest end one. So it's actually faster than it takes to record now. So I think of back in the day, I'd listen to the radio and I'd have my tape and I try to record the song in real time as it's playing on the radio to get my mixtape. And then it advanced to the next step where you could actually burn an entire CD in like 15 minutes. So now you have an hour's worth of audio that you're actual to do in like 15 minutes. And then you get to the next stop of like Napster and torrenting and where people can download all the stuff instantly and it just got faster and faster and faster.
Uh-huh.
And that's where this AI stuff's happening too. So yeah, it can do 30 seconds of audio in under 20 seconds. Eventually that'll be like in one,
So now
it's
you
going to
can't
keep
even
leaping.
trust a phone call.
Nope. Um,
Oh my
so
gosh.
this was able to successfully clone well-known voices like Gilbert Godfrey, Chris Rock, things like that, and it supports speech modulation like pitch, happiness, and anger. So you can even say a certain, I want to sound like this person who's upset or whatever, and it'll even kind of adjust the inflection and pausing and things like that of the audio. So
I have a
users,
question.
yeah.
Why does it have to have a high-end graphics card if it's audio?
Because in order to do this generation, what it does is you're kind of filling it with a bunch of data and it takes your question and it has to parse all of that data really fast, like searching a database and then trying to synthesize and create it. So it's essentially running code and trying to come up with something on the fly in the back end.
And
And
that
graphics
uses,
cards have so many more cores than your CPU. Like you hear like your CPU has like 8 cores, 16
yeah.
threads, or 4 cores.
Uh,
Well, a GPU has like 974 cores or something crazy. It's like just an astronomical
oh,
amount more cores
I didn't
because
know
it's a
that.
dedicated thing. things. So
Okay.
an example is if you're rendering a video, like say you make a movie and whatever it is for a home video with video and audio, and you finally want to save
Or a
it to a
DS Tech
file.
video.
A DS Tech video, exactly. When you got to render that video,
Mhm.
it may take say 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, depending on the length of your video. If you were to run an example is say a rendering that would take an hour on a CPU. You ran it through a GPU, it would only take it I think it's like 37 seconds. It's like less
Oh,
than a
wow.
minute. So it can really render a lot faster. Now,
Okay.
it has to be specific code written to use GPUs in that manner because they're not designed to do this. So that's kind of why these AI tools are using that, because they have so many more cores. They can run at a faster speed.
Interesting.
And yeah,
Okay.
so yeah, that's kind of like a reason why that the GPUs
Okay.
are always used. You can't run it on your CPU. Some can, but it's just even the toppest grade CPU can be outperformed by a low grade GPU if can handle it's programmed to do that specific
Ginny's
task.
getting schooled.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I didn't know that.
So now with the AI being able to run locally and the advancements, kind of where does that lead us? And that's where into the growing threat of AI powered scams. So this is kind of what me as being kind of security orientated is seeing and kind of where I see from that. So what's happening? So tools, the AI audio tools such as like 11 Labs, ZOS, the one we were talking about, there's Valley. They can clone voices with just a short sample of audio. 11 Labs says 11 seconds. If you get 11-second audio clip of someone, that's enough to actually create a clone from that person. Various things are different as well. So what's happening is scammers are using realistic synthetic voices to impersonate CEOs, family members, government officials in fraud schemes. So imagine you get a call from your accountant, or you're calling the company's accountant, and you're spoofing the CEO saying, "Hey, we just have this bid due. Can you transfer some sort of weird request?" And they're sounding just like your boss. So you're like, "Well, I better do it. The main boss told me to do it, right?" But then the next thing you know, there's been some scams where money has left because of that. Talks about here real world use cases. A fraudster used AI-generated voice to trick an employee into wiring $35 million in a Hong Kong scam. That one actually, they used a fake Zoom call as well on top of it to make it look
Oh
like
my
it was completely
gosh.
fake. Like, yeah, it was.
So they see the boss's face and voice
Yep.
in a Zoom meeting.
Yep.
And he says, "Oh, I need you to do that."
Yep, we're gonna do this, that, and the other thing, and so the employee,
Just did it.
Yep.
Oh
There
my
was a
gosh.
Blacktail Studio scam where con artists cloned a business owner's voice and created deepfake videos, scamming victims out of about $177,000. And there's been these are kind of more nefarious ones, but there have been, they call it AI kidnapping scams, where criminals are using AI to fake a child's voice and demand ransom from parents. And if they don't have your kid, they're just
Aw.
pretending it's pretty gross. But I just show you where spoofing is
Oh.
going and how it can be done. So again, I don't need to really explain why this is dangerous. Obviously, AI generated voices are nearly indistinguishable from real ones. The scammers are calling doing all the credit card scams over the phone. Like you think about your grandma or the elderly people who get targeted from those help desk support scams. Call us on Microsoft and we'll fix your computer for you. And now they're actually talking to a scammer. It used to be really obvious you're talking to a scammer, but now because they're using these AI audio voice changing tools,
It's not
it's
as
harder
obvious.
for them to discern that. So just you have to be
Wow.
vigilant.
So
There's
how do you
also-
be vigilant? Are you going to go over that?
Yeah, there'll be some stuff I guess I could talk about at the end on how I would potentially do some of
Okay.
that stuff. So yeah, hopefully I can give you the problems with some solutions, not just problems. So the domain squatting and AI powered website fraud is actually on the rise as well. So when you got the AI spoofing, which we just talked about, the second kind of fraud that's happening is they're using AI to automate your scam emails. Your phishing emails are going to look much better because they can take a website and say, "Hey, I want AI to clone this website for me," and they make a completely spoofed website. An example with the Blacktail Studios one that I referred to earlier is that scammers cloned the website. They slightly altered the domain name. Originally, it was blacktailstudio.com, and then they basically did blacktailstudios.com. They just added an S to it, and then they created a cloned fake website that looked like the original. And then when scammers put their credit card information, things like that, they were able to spoof and just take their information. So we see that common with banking. There's a lot of things where people will try to impersonate a banking website, things like that. And so typically I prefer to use, if your bank has an app, use the app. Don't just use a random web browser as well, so that we're not potentially doing that.
And they run ads on Facebook, because I saw a Duluth Trading one that was so close. It was like, these prices are crazy low.
Right.
I'm like, are they having a major sale?
$100 flannel for $8.
Right? I'm like, oh, that was crazy.
Yep.
And it was a Facebook ad, so you thought it was legit, right?
Yep.
It wasn't.
And so, so with the AI phishing emails, the fake websites, and then the AI generated phishing websites, again, they mimic legitimate websites almost perfectly. And they also are using AI-powered chatbots to lure victims into investment scams by posing as real customers, supporting agents, or selling objects. And I think you had a use case scenario where someone was on Facebook and they were
Yep.
chatting with someone who was saying they were trying to sell a vehicle, and they weren't even selling a vehicle. It was complete. Someone had hacked their account, tried posting this, and then when you're like, well, "That's kind of a good deal. Can I come over?" They kept insisting that you paid remotely via like PayPal and
That's
stuff, and it
exactly what
seemed very
happened.
scammy. So like, just be very vigilant with what you're doing. It's almost getting to the point where you're like,
Yep.
I need to
We
meet
were
you in
like,
person and I need to shake your
exactly.
hand. Like, are you
Exactly.
real?
And that's what we said. We said,
Um,
well, how about I stop by your house? And then they were like insisting on the electronic payment. And I was like,
you live down
I
the
think,
road. Why am I going to do this?
right?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So I think there's something wrong here. And so we did get in touch with the guy. And sure enough,
Yeah.
that's what
His
happened.
account was,
His
yeah.
account was hacked. He couldn't get back in. And the only thing you can do is go to Facebook and try to get your account back. You probably won't because it
hmm
looks to them in their bots, it looks legit. So
It's hard now because even if you call a number, if it's a fake spoof number and you got the wrong person on the other end of the line, they could sound legitimate.
yeah,
So really, the typical thing with phishing is go direct to source, right? If you got a weird link in your email, whatever it is, don't click the link. Go to Amazon.com or wherever, check the original website. Well, it's kind of like this. If your buddy's trying to sell a truck on Facebook and it's odd and weird, and you have their contact number, contact them directly or try to meet them face to
go
face.
to
If
their
it's your
house.
neighbor, yeah, be like, hey, what's going on? Are you aware of this?
hmm
Things like that is pretty much where it's happening. And then sometimes with the requests internally at your company, like I was talking about the scams where they scammed them to sending money fake. It's like you almost need to come up with a secondary passphrase or a code or an authentication method internally that is off the books. An example I give is like we work at tech support, right? So it's very common where a tech may be on site at a customer and they call in, hey, Tim, I don't have my laptop with me. I'm on site. Can you give me the password so I can get in to help this? Or can you assist while I'm on site real quick? And typically it just no questions asked, I can help you with that. But now we have processes in place where are you really the right person? Do you know the code word or the PIN? Like you have a certain PIN number or whatever it is to verify, like if you want the password, the PIN number is 2468, right? But
Yeah.
that's not what it is. But like you have a PIN set up that if someone requests certain information or wants to do a large scale transfer within your organization, that not only do they need to get a verbal confirmation from your C level, you need like a verbal and a written and maybe an in-person. I don't know, you have to have some sort of way of verifying that with an extra layer outside of the way you're communicating, because the way you're communicating could be compromised. So you don't want to
Yeah.
always, so you want to have two kind of layers of that. Again, it's kind of annoying to have to deal with that, but I think that's where eventually it's going to go because they are making more AI detection tools where they can try to, ideally the cool thing would be is if your VoIP system could detect fake scammers automatically, and the second you pick up, they start talking, it would override and say, just so you know, this is a fake person on the other end, and your phone just told you that. Like that would be awesome for security, but we're
It's
just
probably
not there
coming.
yet. Yeah,
It's probably
exactly.
coming. As
Um,
fast as they come up with bad things, the
People are
good guys are
reacting.
working too. So,
Yep.
yeah.
And so the risk of these, they call them open source AI models, because most of the AI models, if you go to ChatGPT and you try to do a scam, it won't let you. There's safeguards in place. There's things that it will see you're trying to do that, and it will typically stop you. Same thing with all the other giant corporate AIs is that you can't be using them for scams because they're supposed to be used for legitimate business purposes. And when you try to do that, it will warn you or will stop your prompt. It won't generate your image or audio, things like that. So with you're doing a local model, meaning I'm running it on my computer, I can do whatever I want because no one's controlling my computer. That's what they call open source local models. So there's benefits and there's negatives to that too. The benefit is that, well, it typically will move at a faster pace than the corporate models because they're constantly creating change. Anyone can use it. The barrier to entry is a lot less. But then the negative parts of that is that just like closed source, OpenAI is open source, have no restrictions. So you can train, modify, and do this to make fake scam websites. You could use copyrighted content. You could do things that the big models will not allow you to do because you're running it locally on your machine. So if you obviously got caught doing that, you could get in trouble.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the big thing. And there's no way to I guess, police that or stop that
Mhm.
from happening. Once it's out there, it's out there. There's no stopping it. And, I look at AI as just a tool. It can be used for good or bad, however
Yep.
you choose to use it. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to stop everyone from using it in a bad way. The best way you can do is kind of protect yourself from it, or
My
at least
favorite
be aware of it.
analogy is like a brick. A brick could be used to
Yeah,
build churches and schools and beautiful buildings, but it could also
right.
be used as a weapon,
Yeah,
right? So,
exactly.
or
Um,
destruction, whatever.
So again, why it's dangerous for the local models? Criminals can train the AI on illegal data, creating tools for fraud, misinformation, hate speech. They could do other things too as well, where they're kind of like taking an actual audio, like say a copyrighted material, and trying to make their own versions of it, selling it online, creating books, other works, all that kind of stuff. There's no content filtering, so AI generated scams and deepfakes are harder to control. And AI companies can't just take down malicious actors. If you were using ChatGPT or one of these other ones all the time, and they saw you were doing malicious activity, they're going to just shut your account down and then ban it and make sure that you're not getting back in. And they put some safeguards there. But if you're doing it locally, there's no way to do that. And stop that. So really the biggest thing with AI is just be aware of the emerging scams as they're coming out there, and just be aware that it is going to kind of ramp up. But at the same time, people on the defense will be using it. Ideally, like I said, the coolest thing I thought is like if your phone would just tell you, hey, this person is using AI audio modification, and it'll give you a notification or detect you on the phone while you're live on the phone. That may already even exist in some really high level areas. I don't know, but that's where I see it. Or like you'll have a screen where you have your video, and you can just have your tool scan it and say, was this AI generated? And it'll tell you whether it's AI generated or not right out of the gate. And you can do that for the main models like ChatGPT and the ones that are out there, because the identifiers, they're kind of putting little copyright things. It could be one little pixels off in the corner that a normal human can't see, but the AI can detect it to know that it was AI generated. But then the local models may not have those things. It might be harder to detect, but they will be having AI on the defense as well. So just be aware of the scams. Biggest one is audio right now, not so much video. And then just we just see the spam phishing emails been ramping up like crazy. So if you don't have some sort of email filtering or security or in place, I do highly recommend doing that if you've waited so long until now to get it, because you're like, oh, no one's ever clicked a bad link before. Well, it might be time to consider getting some of that stuff in place, because it is just ramping up and it's getting harder and harder for an everyday person to spot. Even myself, I do this all day long, and I see an email and I have to like triple take, like, is this a real one or not? Because they're getting so good now at impersonating. So
I'm sure I've asked you several times, is this legit?
Like, exactly.
Dude, I don't think this is legit. I don't want to click it.
So
but
AI is neat. It's cool. It's going to be used for a lot of purposes, that could hopefully improve lives. But at the same time, again, with any tool, it's going to be used for good and bad. So just being aware of the bad use cases is the best way to protect yourself from it, because as much as we rely on these tools, being informed is still the best, protection against any of this stuff. So
might be a good thing where we're more in touch with each other personally, because we'll have to like, I got to see Tim before I know that was Tim, right? So
exactly.
I don't know, but just be diligent, trust no one, trust nothing, zero trust, right?
Yep.
Be diligent, be safe out there, drop your questions. I'd love to hear them so we can have more ideas for more of these videos. So whatever you need is what we want to put out there.
For sure.
Make it a great day. We'll see you next time.